thrill seekers, and welcome along to another exciting journey through London. This time we're starting off south of the river and ending up north, starting in Shad Thames, taking in some famous landmarks, Tower Bridge, through the city, St Paul's, the West End, around Regent's Park, ending up just past Lloyd's. But you could also look at this as a social history through London, because where we're starting off in Shad Thames 150 years ago was London's largest warehouse complex, and it must have been a pretty exciting, noisy, dirty place to be. And of course all the goods that came in here would have been traded in the city, and then the gentlemen who owned the companies that did the trading and the selling of those goods would have ended up watching cricket at Lord's at the weekend. Some of the street names around here are still very evocative. Jamaica Wharf, there's a Vanilla and Sesame Court, and the other names, Caraway, Ginger, Cumin. It just bears testament to the history of this fascinating part of town. So while we're stuck at the lights, I'll just give you a quick tour around the motorcycle for those of you who don't ride. The right hand controls the throttle and the front brake, and the left hand controls the clutch, which at the moment I've got pulled in because we're in gear, and of course as soon as you let the clutch out, we're off. The right foot controls the rear brake, and the left foot operates the gears. And in fact, I'll get a camera on there one day, because the feet are so busy. Honestly, it's like watching Darcy bustle. No, it's very quiet on the roads today, despite being a weekday morning. There's just been an enormous rain shower, actually. But it's left us with this sparkling blue sky and slightly wet roads. But I think today's video is going to be more about the sights of London, and a little bit less about riding the bike and roadcraft, just because there's nobody around. Having said that, I'll give this transit a little bit of space, because I'm sure you haven't come here to watch the back of a rusty old van. And back here we get a bit of view. Normally at this time of day, for instance, this whole approach to Tower Bridge is gridlocked. Tower Bridge is extremely narrow, and all the traffic funnels into it. And you see these huge 20-mile-an-hour signs painted on the road. I've got a story to tell you about those, which we'll come back to later. So despite Tower Bridge being one of London's most iconic landmarks, it was actually only finished in 1894, so it's a relatively recent addition to the skyline. So if we just nip past this bus, we'll get a view on the left of the new and affordable block of flats they've just built, and the Mayor's office and the Shard. And it also gives me a chance to show you this time-lapse that I shot a few years ago. It's all over in about 20 seconds, but I seem to remember being on the bridge for hours. Well, videos, 25 frames a second, and we need 500 frames for 20 seconds, and I think I was shooting a frame every 30 seconds. So you can work that out. So while we weave our way through these increasingly narrowing gaps, there's just about got away with that one. Between these two towers, there's a couple of aerial walkways that back in the day used to be the haunts of various ne'er-do-wells and ladies of the night, because nobody else used to go up there, but it was only accessible by a narrow staircase. So they shut it down in 1910, only reopening in, 20 years ago or so, I think, minus the ne'er-do-wells. So behind the hotel, that surely must be ripe for coming down soon, on the right hand side here, is the most beautiful part of London, St Catherine's Dock. Oh, there's my happy face again. Here's a couple of views of St Catherine's Dock I shot recently. I mean, it's quite a destination, so my recommendation would be go there first, and then nip over the river to Shad Thames, and then on down the South Bank. So even though Tower Bridge Road widens out slightly at this point, well, having said that, they've actually just blocked off one lane, so there's a car stuck on the left there that he's going to have to pull back in, and that even a cyclist can't get by. There's not really room for two motorcycles to pass, so there's sort of honour amongst motorcyclists. We let each other go, and then I can just go down here and nip in this little gap. It gives us a better view of the Tower of London. Tower of London's slightly older than Tower Bridge, at 1078. Here's a reverse view of Tower Bridge. We're on the road on the left. Yeah, it was built by William the Conqueror. It didn't go down very well, evidently. People saw it as a symbol of oppression. Only 7 people have actually been executed in the Tower of London, which is surprising. up to World War One, that is. During World War One and in World War Two, they dispatched 12 people, all for espionage, which is much more recent than I would have thought. To the left of this shot, though, is where the real fun happened, on Tower Hill. That's where all the public executions took place. You take your children, bring your grandmother, a bit of light beheading for a Sunday afternoon, a bit of hanging, whatever takes your fancy, really. Something for everybody down there. Apologies for the slightly mawkish turn this video's taken. We'll try and cheer things up by heading up the Minories. That's not a euphemism. Passing Tower Gateway Station there, those trains take you all the way out to Canary Wharf and the Docklands, which we must do one day. That's a very different feel down there. No, here we go. We are actually going up the Minories. Now, I love this building on the right. Ibex House it's called. Built in the streamlined modern style in 1937. Stunning bit of architecture. Did a shoot in there once and kind of fell in love with the place. So the Minories takes us up from Tower up to Aldgate. It's very quiet today. We're sort of still at the end of the COVID. Well, in the middle of the COVID, actually, to be honest. This is just before the second lockdown in London. It's Aldgate Station on the right, and we'll just nip inside this black cab. But it is unnerving that is the only car around. This street would normally be pretty much full of traffic in both directions. I suppose like any financial district, the city's a strange place. It totally relies on office workers for its life. There's no retail as such, and there's no entertainment, so if the office workers aren't here, like at the weekend, or in the middle of a pandemic, then the area becomes like a ghost town. There is nothing happening here. But I think that's only temporary. Anyway, on the right you can see the Gherkin there, designed by Norman Foster and Partners. On the left you can see the Scalpel. I was up there recently. Here's a view from one of the upper floors. And coming into view just behind the Scalpel is the Lloyd's building, designed by Richard Rogers in 1986. And in a rather nice symmetrical type, right opposite the Lloyd's building is the Cheesegrater, which was also designed by Richard Rogers. It's like become his manor, hasn't it? That was in 2013. And there's Foster's Gherkin. And I photographed Norman Foster a couple of times, the first time here with his rather remarkable Dalmatian car, and the second time while doing an interview with Stephen Bailey there. And here's a view I shot when I was working inside the Gherkin of the Lloyd's building and the Cheesegrater. So there's a lot of famous architecture all in one little spot there, and the Lloyd's building still looks absolutely wonderful, I think. So controversial at the time, but still looks completely contemporary. And it's brave. And there's a view of Tower 42. I don't work for them anymore, but I spent quite a few years working for Tower 42. This is the best staff team picture I've ever shot, I think, looking from the top down. I kept the strap of the camera tight around my neck on that one. "22 Bishopsgate. Not quite finished yet. I suppose they'll delay the opening a bit. So they've closed off Bank. If you look down there, Threadneedle Street, its Bank is closed off to traffic, and it's caught me out, I think, to the tune of about 120 quid in the past. There's proper signs there, but originally there was only a little sort of sign on the side of the road saying no motor vehicles, and if you missed that, well, you never saw. You got a letter in the post. Here's a view I shot from Waterloo Bridge looking back at the city, just to give you some context of where we are. We'll be popping down to St Paul's in a minute. Swing a left now down Wormwood Street and onto London Wall. Got involved with a fantastic fight here. Well, not a fight as such, more of a sort of argument with a man from this building. This is Deutsche Bank's old headquarters. They're moved, or they're moving, I think. Maybe they're still in there. They're soon to move to a new building just by Finsbury Circus. And I was taking a photograph of that building, which I'm perfectly allowed to do. And the security guard came out and said, you can't do that. To which I said, yes, I can. And it was one of those circular conversations. It just went on. You can't, I can, you can't. So I offered to phone up the police, and we ended up friends in the end. It all calmed down. Got to know your rights though, haven't you? I was stopped for speeding down here. It wasn't on this stretch, it was just after these lights. I pulled out from the left and then turned left. And almost immediately, the policeman puts his hand up. He was on a motorcycle as well, so I thought that'd be alright. He's a mate, one of us. So he pulls me over. And he shows me his speed gun, and it says 32. And I sort of shrugged, and I went, really? I mean, 32? You're going to do me for 32? And he said, what's the speed limit then? And I sort of looked round, and yes, there's lots of 20 signs everywhere. And 20, as we all know, is plenty. Anyway, you live and learn. It's 20 throughout the city of London now. In fact, in most of London it's 20. On a speed awareness course I went to once, it was entirely full of black cab drivers who had been done going over Tower Bridge, which I think was one of the first 20 limits in London. Anyway, it was a hilarious morning. This room full of taxi drivers, none of whom thought they should have been there. I've been going over that bridge every day, all my life. What's the world come to if a man can't go over a bridge at 30? This is always irritating for a motorcyclist because you actually always want to be at the head of the queue of traffic. I mean, it's the safest place to be. You don't want to be stuck in traffic. Sometimes there's just nowhere to go, and then, oh, irritatingly, he gets through and I don't. Where's the justice in that? It's all come about because they've closed Cheapside, which is the road on the left there. So along with Bank being shut, Cheapside being shut, I think Cannon Street's shut as well. It's a bit of a nightmare around this part of town. I'm a fan of modern architecture, but that building on the left there is called One New Change, and I just don't quite get it. I keep on trying. Maybe half its problem is battling with that. St Paul's Cathedral. And you've got to do something pretty special, really, haven't you? If you're going to compete with one of Christopher Wren's finest. They started building that in 1675. And one way or another, it's seen quite a lot, hasn't it? So I think the best thing I can do is just let us soak it in. Still not looking very happy. I tried to make a note to myself from our last film to smile more, but it's difficult smiling on your own though, isn't it? Because you tend to just look like an idiot. And it might get stopped. People might think I had an issue. Anyway, so I'll keep the grumpy face. Or should I say the look of concentration? So we're going to swing a right here up to Old Bailey. The Central Criminal Court of England and Wales. Changed a bit since they plonked these new buildings. They're rather fine though, I quite like them. Interesting buildings. So Old Bailey's on the right here. Bizarrely, I found out that they used to have public hangings here until 1868. Seems quite bizarre. It seems 1868 seems very recent. You get the feeling, don't you, that Londoners did like a bit of public execution. Thank God we're living in more civilised times, eh? Now, I've got to admit to a bit of an embarrassing mistake here, because I haven't been down this road past Bart's Hospital. Bart's Hospital's on the right, this big building here. And I haven't been down this stretch of road for a little while, so I thought I was going to whiz up here and show you Spitalfields Market, which is interesting. And it was all going to plan until there. You see, I'm slowing down thinking that's changed, and then it's changed to the extent where it's blocked off. My quizzical look now follows. Yes, that's a quizzical look. Looking around in disbelief. So, yes. You can tell how long it takes to comprehend these things. Well, I've made a note. I won't go down there again. That road is over now. It's dead to me, that road. Useless. I mean, it doesn't go anywhere, does it? So, let's hang a right here and we'll head towards the West End. Follow these two lonely cyclists. Still nobody about. It'll be interesting if we do the same video in, well, I was going to say a year, but maybe less. Over Holborn Viaduct here. Takes you up to Clerkenwell. In fact, just up that road ended another video I did from St John's Wood to Farringdon. So we're in that neck of the woods. Big glass building on the left is Sainsbury's headquarters. And if you keep on going left, you end up in the sort of Fleet Street Law Courts area. And now we're on the long drag that is Holborn, Midtown, as the property agents around these parts call it. But on this particular part of Midtown, not much goes on. That's not to say it's a boring road. I'm struggling to find interesting things on it, but there must be some. So I think we'll fast forward this bit. Maybe we'll have to come back and look at Holborn again in some more detail. But we'll pick this up now as we cross over Kingsway and head down towards St Giles. The road has dried up, which is nice. Just be a little bit more confident about braking. A little bit more confident about taking the corners. I think it's the fear of the unexpected on a motorcycle. You always try to anticipate as far in advance as you can, but on a wet road, if anything does happen, you've got a lot less margin for error than you do in a car, because essentially you're going to come off quite quickly. Now this has all changed literally in the last couple of weeks, because this used to be 3 lanes of traffic all going straight ahead, but that right-hand lane is now turn right only, and with special dispensation for cyclists to go through red lights. And you can see there are those cut-out people standing at the traffic junction there on the right, and there's a real cut-out person, a human cut-out in the distance there. Warning, has he got a loud hailer? They often do that. He's warning everybody that your world has been turned upside down. There's the cutout man. There's the real man. Two real people and another cutout. So they take this very seriously. This all used to be one way, and they're turning it into 2-way, which for the period of about a month means it's complete carnage and nobody knows what's happening. Coming up to Central St Giles. Now these buildings were designed by Renzo Piano, who did the Shard, but also worked with Richard Rogers on the Pompidou Centre. So you tend to find the same names cropping up again and again, don't you? I'm not quite convinced. It is very brave, but more importantly, it acts as a gateway to the most important street in London. The only street, really, you ever need to go down, which is here on the left, Denmark Street. They're 60 sounds, they're the new boys on the block. They sell Gibsons. But here on the left is Regent Sounds, where the Rolling Stones recorded their first record. The Sex Pistols lived above number 6, they recorded their first demos there. Elton John and Bernie wrote songs in their office at the street. There's no Dom guitars, they do vintage guitars. Now you might think it looks a little bit the worse for wear, a little bit down at heel, and you might be right. It's been a victim really of the development of Crossrail to the right, around the Tottenham Court Road area where all the buildings have been knocked down, and a lot of the shops in Denmark Street have been, I was going to say forced, but asked nicely to move around and change locations, and some have left and some have moved. I think it's such a destination there. I have great faith that it'll come back to the glory days. I mean, it is a destination. It's like Carnaby Street, and it just needs cafes and pubs and music shops, and be a fantastic culturally important part of London there as we turn on to Charing Cross Road and into the heart of that Crossrail development, which has really, really changed this area. The only bit that really remains is the Centrepoint tower here on the right. It's now residential. It's all flats. The Centrepoint charity for homeless people was named after that building. The Centrepoint tower was kept empty for years. Well, the property developer who built it, kept it empty because he wanted just one tenant in there. And at the time, nobody wanted to go in there as just a single occupier, so that he kept the building empty because he could. He bought the land very cheaply and property prices were going up in the surrounding area. And this caused so much offence to people that, well, that's why the Centrepoint charity is called Centrepoint, as a protest to that. But I think it's a lovely building. Now we're on Tottenham Court Road, which has become one of the most amusing streets in London for a motorcyclist. It used to be one way, heading north, the way we're going now up to Euston, and they've made it two-way, but as you can tell, the only vehicles allowed to come down it are buses, which means that all the cars are crammed into the left-hand lane, and it is one solid traffic jam from Oxford Street all the way up to the Euston Tower, which you can just see in the distance. You've got to be watch out for things like that Addison Lee car there, because if you're on a motorcycle, he clearly didn't look in his mirror, and people will just pull out. And if you're passing cars like this, which can be tricky, you've got to keep your eyes absolutely peeled. People will do U-turns. They'll put. In fact, the only time I've ever come off my motorcycle was at walking pace in a situation like that, where a black cab decided to do a U-turn right in front of me. Didn't look, just did the U-turn, and I slammed into his driver's door. We're still in the traffic jam, you can see. And the amusing part of that story was, as I lay there on the ground, a guy comes up to me, hands me his business card and said, well, I saw it all, and if you need a witness, just give me a ring. And he was a barrister. Sometimes it all works in your favour, doesn't it? So having said that Tottenham Court Road is like a glorified car park, parts of it at least today seem to be moving quite freely. Ooh, here's a small gap. Let's go for it anyway. I think we'll have to come back on a normal day and we can do a compare and contrast video. I suppose if the idea is to get traffic out of London, then creating traffic jams is one way to do it, because you wouldn't want to sit in it more than once. So crossed over the Euston Road now, and we're going to head left into Drummond Street. Most of my career there's been a camera shop on Drummond Street. It's actually behind where we're looking now. And it's gone as also part of the oh no, it's HS2, I think, that they've knocked that down. I don't like change very much. Just nipping left now into Chester Gate. which takes us into Regent's Park, named after George IV when he was Prince Regent. The building on the right here is called Chester Terrace. Now that was designed by Nash, but it was completely altered by the property developer's son. You can just imagine that's very nice, but I'm just going to make a few changes and in fact completely alter it. And the property developer was a guy called James Burton, who's a very famous country guitarist. Maybe not the same James Burton, but his son was called Decimus, and he completely changed it. Nash was so furious, evidently he tried to get the whole thing demolished. It wasn't, it's still there. This is called Cumberland Terrace, and this was also designed by Nash and left as he intended it. Of course, now we both look at them as fantastic bits of architecture, but you can imagine Nash going, "What have you done?" But Daddy was the property developer paying Nash, so he couldn't argue. That's a Danish church. Every year they open up and they have Danish pastries in there. It's a wonderful thing. Take a ride down there to Gloucester Gate, takes you down to Camden Town. Oh, what's this lorry doing in the middle of the road? I'd say that was a hazard. Anyway, whizzing round to the zoo now, where the daily excitement is to see if the giraffes are out. A few years ago, they had a baby giraffe, and at the time, it came up to, I suppose, its mother's knee. And I've been doing this journey for so long now that the baby giraffe is nearly as tall as Mummy and Daddy giraffe. Maybe I need a change of scene. So coming to the end of the journey now, we're just at the end of Prince Albert Road and St John's Wood High Street on the right. We'll just edge our way around the traffic, filter our way around this Prius. I think we can ease out into the roundabout without stopping behind this van. Yes, always Lloyd's, glimpse of Lloyd's on the right. Past the company that does amazingly tasteless Range Rover conversions. But they've been doing it for 30 years, so must be doing something right. This is the nursery end, all the training pitches. My grandstand coming into view soon. The place where I'm going to be sitting, I think, for most of next summer. Top level up there. Bottle of Prosecco in one hand, burger in the other. Sitting next to a chum. Don't want to be too close, nice and high so I can see the sun setting over the players in the middle. So if you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, that'd be great, and if you can subscribe, even better. I'll try and do one a week. Some won't be as long as this. Some won't have any landmarks at all. But hopefully, they'll all be interesting, in one way or another.